Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate using Azure Key Vault secrets in CI/CD job. For this, I'm going to configure an OpenID Connect in Azure. So that helps me to avoid storing secrets. So this documentation is super handy and helpful for us to go ahead and configure the OpenID Connect in Azure and generate a JSON Web Token in GitLab CI/CD to retrieve a temporary credentials from Azure. How do we do that? This documentation is going to tell that in 4 simple steps. But is there any simplified version of it? How do I go ahead and do it quickly using PowerShell? So I got a script for the same. I'm going to quickly walk you through how to do that. So for that, first we need to create a service principal. And right after that, we need to assign a reader permission for that created service principal in the Azure subscription. And then we grant a permission on the Azure Key Vault. Assume that the Key Vault is existing already. And then we're going to create an Azure AD application federated credentials. Let's do one after other. So I'm going to create a service principal for a QAT environment, quality assurance testing environment. So if I run the commandlet new azure-ad service principal with a display name, this indeed create a service principal and returns with the app ID and the display name and the ID object. So what I need to do now is I need to make sure I've got the object ID of this particular SPN that's required to do the role assignment. So let me quickly go ahead and take the app ID, copy this, and I replace the existing one which I created for the other environment. And let's go ahead and run a command get azure-ad service principal. I can't display name begins with all right. Let me do this. Something like this should work for me. Intra. I've got one dev, one QAT. So that's the ID. If that's the object ID, I'm not really sure. Let's quickly check for that. Select object star. So do I see something like an object ID, the property? Let's see ID comma object. I don't see anything called an object, so it should be an object ID, but I'm not really sure. Let me quickly go ahead and pull that up and copy the ID 886. If not, what we can do is we can access our Azure portal and quickly go to Microsoft Entra ID, that's our Azure AD, and open up app registrations. Click on all applications. I see Intra DevOps QAT. When I open this up, I see the application ID starts with 9F and object ID with 9C. So this is not the object ID. So let me quickly grab the object ID from here and pass it over there for the object ID value. And now that I'm going to grant a reader permission for this particular SPN. Copy this snippet, go back to the Azure subscription just to confirm that I don't have any permission for the SPN prior to granting one. So I'm going to IAM and check access. Let me type in intra. So I've got dev and QAT. If I click on QAT, I don't see any role assignments. That's good. So let me quickly go back here and run this snippet. That's good. All right, now I got a operation return an invalid status code bad request. What's the reason for that? Let me check that one more time. Is my object ID, whatever I've copied, is the right one? Let me go to the all applications and open up Intrasphere. That's the right object ID, but whatsoever reason, that didn't pick it up. Let's open up the client ID and try to grant a permission for the same. Let's try to do with debug. So it says principal account does not exist in the directory. D1F5, that's the directory. Okay, let me try to copy the object ID again and replace it with that. That's my application ID. That's good. Let me copy this and try to run with the debug parameter to see principles of type application cannot validly be used in role assignments. What does that mean? The role assignment is correct and scope is also right. The role definition name is a reader. Principal type not supported. That's the right one. What happens if I go to the Azure portal and grant a permission by myself without running the code? Let's see how that works. Go to the IAM, add role assignment and search for reader and then select a member and do intra QAD. That works. And that's the object ID. That's strange. So my object ID is the one that's causing the trouble. How do I find the object ID? Get azure-ad service principal. Okay, that's good. Object ID. If I run with this, I can see. Let's try to run this snippet. Hopefully this should work. And that worked. Now I see the permission is granted. If I go to the Azure subscription and open up the subscription and IAM, check the access, type in for intra, I can see QAT, I see the reader permission is granted. That's good. That's really good. So now that I'm going to give a permission for the key vault. So I've got a dev key vault, but that's okay because I don't have QAT key vault. I'm going to give the access for the same application ID. Want to make sure that I get the application ID from my Entra app registrations, all application, and DevOps QAT. That's my application ID. Ends with 44. That's good. Copy the snippet and make sure that you run this to make sure you get a key vault administrator permission. You can choose the respective permission for you, but I'm giving the administrator permission. So I go to my key vault, and now I need to make sure I click on the secrets. I have a secret here. I don't need to do any changes over here. Just have one secret to retrieve for the demonstration purpose. If I go to the subscription and go to the IAM and check access, do the same for intra QAT. Now we should see it has a reader permission. And similarly, I go to the key vault. Sorry, I navigated in the wrong place. I go to the key vault and IAM and check access. Do for intra, select QAT. You should see two role assignments. One reader, which is inherited from the subscription. Another one is a key vault administrator, which we directly assign now. That's exactly what we need. And the final important step is we need to provide we need to create Azure-AD application federated credentials. So for that I need the object ID. I'm copying the object ID and come over here, replace the object ID. As I said, this is for the QAT. I'm gonna create a QAT branch. So I've got the branch already existing in my repository. So I'm giving the subject as project path, my group, my project name, and the ref underscore type, that's my branch, is going to be my QAT. And make sure that your audience is gitlab.com. If you are using your custom domain, it should be something like gitlab.customdomain.com or whatever the instance's name is all about. So just make sure that you connect with your GitLab administrator and get the right audiences and issuer. So the name is a friendly name, so I'm going to name it as GitLab Federated Identity. And the subject is pretty much important because if you're going to run from the main branch, you have to just make sure that you give the main branch references here. That's very important. For each environment, you can have a different client ID, authentication, or application IDs. Right? The client ID is nothing but the application ID. And the description is again the friendly term to make it clear what is this AD application is all about. That just to describe about that. So if I'm going to run this by doing a right click and run selection, all right, I've got some issues here. What is that says? Let me quickly check the application object ID. So let's get azad application AD azad service principal, and the object ID is that. All right, application object ID. Get AZ. All right, no, now that I just come back to my portal because I'm a bit confused here to understand this ID. So what I do is come to the app registration. This is my application QAT. I copy the object ID. This should be my application object ID, not an object ID. Let's give a try with this. Copy and run the selection. Now it worked as expected. So you can see now that I got the response back. So I've got the federated credential created. How do I confirm it? Just run get azad app federated credential and run this. You need to provide the application object ID. So I provide that. That's what exactly I said for the subject. So in my repository, I've got a branch main dev and QAT. If I go to the QAT branch, you see my pipeline failed earlier because I haven't created an app federated credential. So now that I have created, so let me go to the pipeline to show you the previous job. And I open up the previous job, click on the authentication. So you see the error message which says no matching federated identity record found for this specific subject. Now that I have created one, so what happens? It should work, but hang on. What should I do for that is I need to go to my code and open up my QAT branch, and in my YAML file I need to make sure I have the right client ID, which is nothing but my application ID. Go get it from here and click on edit, open in web ID. So this is a bit easy and convenient for me, which gives a good VS Code look and feel for editing. My tenant ID remains same and my keyword server URL remains same because I haven't created the new one. Now I just remove all this part which is of no use, and I'm going to retrieve the keyword rather than using a native way like how this documentation shows, because this works only on premium and ultimate tier. I'm using a free tier. So for that, what I need to do is I need to make sure I use a CLI command and retrieve it. So what exactly this does is, in the variables I am passing out the keyword server URL, client ID and tenant ID. There's no client secret or certificates. What exactly it happens is, what it does is it just goes and look for the audience and it matches with the federated app credential. It looks for the subject, things were good, and then it will pass the token, and that will be captured here in the variable GitLab OADC token, and it will give me a temporary credential to log into Azure, And right after that, I go ahead and pull out the keyboard secret because I have granted a respective permission for that particular client ID. It's that simple. Let me quickly go ahead and say for demo run pipeline on QAT. So I've committed the code back to my repository and build and click on the pipelines. Now that you should see the pipeline is running, it may take few minutes to run, maybe seconds or minutes. Let's quickly confirm how long it takes by looking at the previous job. So the previous job took approximately 26 seconds, if I'm not wrong. Yes, it took 26 seconds. And now the current job which is running is completed, took 28 seconds, and it's success. What exactly we see? The secret. Go back to your Azure portal and try to get your KB Intrasphere dev. Click on secrets. That's my secret. That's good, right? So this pretty much simple and easy in 4 simple steps. What we have done is like we create a AD application and then we give our permissions, and then we created a AD federated ID credentials with the right issuer, subject, and audience. It's that simple. Please feel free to leave your comments for any corrections or a feedback. We'll definitely address it. Thanks for watching my video.